Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, this second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk. We'll continue to take your calls on Dr. Ben Carson. Glad to hear what you think of him, your reaction to what you heard in my interview with him, whether you think he is strong enough to take the slings and arrows that would come with a presidential campaign. And that, frankly, is a part of my concern for him. Dr. Carson is, I don't think you're going to meet somebody who is kinder, who is gentler, who has a softer heart than Dr. Carson. But the political world is a world that chews people like that up and spits them out before breakfast. I mean, the kind of teeth that are operated by the secular fundamentalists in our culture that chew up people that get in their way. It's almost an astonishing thing to behold. And I don't know that Dr. Carson has run into the kind of vitriol and sheer hatred that he's going to encounter if he does wind up seriously running for public office. And I just don't want to see anything bad happen to him. And I think it would be ugly. I think it would be horrid. I think it would be horrible. I think it would be horrible for his family. And the collateral damage there could just be, you could have debris strewn all over the landscape. And I just don't want to see that to happen to Ben Carson. I just think he's a terrific human being, and I just don't want to see somebody like that get just kind of mauled in the process of standing for public office, and that would be my concern. And that he has such a strong desire for mutual understanding, for coming together, for reasoning together, for trying to see things from the other person's perspective, such a desire to urge the other side to reciprocate by trying to understand where we're coming from, see things from our point of view, see if there's some way we can come to some kind of mutual understanding here. And I think in the political world, I think what Ben Carson desires is probably not realistic. It is just not going to happen. It's great counsel, advice in personal relationships. And in general, it's great counsel. I'm not dissing it whatsoever. But I think when you get into the political world, what happens, you get to a place where you just have to take a stand and try to recruit as many other people as you can to follow you and just accept the fact as just a plain, simple fact of life that there are going to be a lot of people who will never, ever agree with you. It doesn't matter how much time you spend massaging the issue, nuancing the issue, finessing the issue, talking things over, seeking understanding, understanding each other, listening, being patient. There are just X number of people that's never going to work for them. And so if your goal is to keep working with people till you get everybody kind of around the campfire singing Kumbaya in politics, that is not going to happen. I just wonder how realistic the kind of approach to life that Dr. Carson is talking about, how realistic that's going to be in the give and take of a brutal political world. Maybe even a generation ago you could have done this thing, but things are so bitter and polarized right now. And the left, there used to be a time, probably maybe a generation ago, where you could actually have conversations and debates and a dialogue about some of these public policy issues without everybody immediately resorting to name-calling. But you can't do that anymore. People on the left, the first words out of their mouth are name-calling, ridicule, mockery, calling you a homophobe or a bigot or some other name, and just trying to dismiss you out of hand. It's one thing if we're prepared to engage in dialogue and, come now and let us reason together. I'm all for that. I'm completely down with that. I'm 100% all over that. But what happens when the other guy doesn't want to sit down and reason together? He just wants to cut you off at the knees. All the conversation in the world isn't going to do a thing to move the ball forward in that situation. So anyway, we'll take calls from you on what you think about Dr. Carson, and also want to take calls this hour on Bo Bergdahl. So let's go ahead and we can load up the calls. We'll talk about Bo Bergdahl here in this second hour. I've got some more information to bring you about this whole situation. Jeff, why don't we grab soundbite number 12? This is A12. This is Jay Carney yesterday. Now, you and I, we know that the Taliban is a terrorist group. We know that without any question. We know that there's no dispute about that no intelligent person would think anything other than that the Taliban is a terrorist group. So, Mark Knoller, CBS News, asks Jay Carney a very good question. Does the U.S. still regard the Taliban as a terrorist group? And here's how their exchange went.
Does the U.S. still regard the Taliban as a terrorist group?
We regard the Taliban as an enemy combatant in a conflict that has been going on in which the United States has been involved for more than a decade. And in this case, although, as you know, we dealt with the Qataris in order to secure his release, it was absolutely the right thing to do because he was a uniformed member of the U.S. military who was in captivity as a prisoner, not as a hostage. And so we sought his recovery and succeeded in recovering him.
Now, interesting that he and Susan Rice are not on the same page because Susan Rice said he was, in fact, a hostage. So here is Jay Carney saying, no, he wasn't a hostage. He was a prisoner. So, no, he doesn't answer the question. Is the Taliban a terrorist group? We regard them as an enemy combatant. So he just dodges the question. He just avoids giving a direct answer to that question. Now, let's grab clip number 2 if we can, Rob. You go back to 2013 because this issue came up at the time. There was a time when you couldn't have a prisoner released without Congress agreeing to it. Congress had to sign off on it. Congress had to authorize it. They changed it in response to requests from Obama. So now all that Congress had to do was simply to notify Congress. They didn't have to get permission. They just had to give Congress 30 days of notification that they were going to do a prisoner exchange, a prisoner swap. And, of course, that didn't happen in this case. Nobody in Congress got notified until the swap had already been completed. But here's Jay Carney giving us his promise on behalf of the president in 2013, June 21, 2013. Let's listen.
What I can tell you is that the main dialogue that we support is the dialogue between Afghans, between the Taliban and the Afghan government. However, there are some issues that we would like to discuss with the Taliban directly, and that includes the safe return of Sergeant Bergdahl, who has been gone for far too long. We continue to call for and work toward his safe and immediate release. We cannot discuss all the details of our efforts, but there should be no doubt that on a daily basis, we are continuing to pursue, using our military, intelligence, and diplomatic tools, the effort to return him home safely. And our hearts are with the Bergdahl family. With regard to the transfer of Taliban detainees from Guantanamo Bay, the United States has not made the decision to do that, though we do expect the Taliban to raise this issue in our discussions if and when those discussions happen. As we have long said, however, we would not make any decisions about transfer of any detainees without consulting with Congress and without doing so in accordance with U.S. law.
Brr. Completely forgot all about that. Focal Point AFR Talk. Back with your calls and more. Stay with us.